Good morning, evening, afternoon, everyone. Today we are back with more extreme sports courtesy of Kate McCaffrey. We're going surfing again with our dear pet dog. Now, if you haven't watched my previous videos on this before, you really should. But in case you haven't, here's the quick rundown. You either paintbrush or tinker the outermost ice of a server, you run that server, and break the ice subroutines using either Lady or Security Nexus. Finally, you surf all the way down to the base of the server and then access all the cards. So this is a very easy way to get through an entire server without requiring anything other than a single barrier breaker. It's that amazing, and it works very well if you can sustain it with the money, which I've loaded in this deck with the prepaid voice pad economic engine. Yep, that's more or less about it. I'm playing up against Argus Security, so meat damage will be on my mind in addition to assembling my entire rig. So I begin with a pretty good hand. My first diesel draws into 2 more diesels, so I'm pretty much set for card draw for the first 3 turns of the game. And I'll continue chalking up money, drawing a bit, and finally installing the dog with modded. Modded's a pretty good include in this deck because there are lots of 3 or 4 install programs and hardware in the deck. And of course, the big 8 install Security Nexus is heavily discounted when you use modded to introduce it into your deck. To your board. My opponent does get a hostile takeover out, but I'm able to keep up with him in terms of credits thanks to the prepaid economy, even though I haven't found any prepaid voice pads just yet. Now he starts getting a server up, but it is occupied by a Jackson Howard, so I can actually afford to wait. Diesel draws me into Proco, so that's definitely something I'm looking to install this turn along with Show Gamble. So this up to now it's very standard prepaid voice pad, prepaid Kate play. You wouldn't suspect anything out of the ordinary when seeing my opening right here. There's nothing out of the ordinary at all. You usually expect an SMC, but I haven't drawn into any yet, so it's perfectly plausible that I'm just playing flat out normal prepaid Kate. I continue drawing with Proco, and I use my last click to install Dyson memchip. This is the point where you might suspect there's something fishy. Prepaid Kate doesn't usually use Dyson memchip. It's incredible in this deck because it boosts your link by 1, which makes the Security Nexus trace all the more easier to beat. More importantly, it gives you the extra memory because Paintbrush takes up 2 memory. It's quite a memory hog. Alright, I draw into my SMC here, and now we can get the games going. He does get a single advanced card out, so I'm going to run the server to keep him honest here. He resists an archer against me, which trashes my dog. That's completely fine. I'm very well prepared for that. In the event that I get hit by a destroyer, my plan was to install the other dog from my hand with modded. No big losses. I forced him to lose 1 agenda point, so I consider that as a victory. And all he got for his efforts wasn't even an over advanced Atlas. It was a lowly profiteering, which he completely cashed in. So now he's up to 27 credits, but I'm keeping up with him. I'm on 26 after playing a lucky find. So I'm never having to worry about C double scorched, even though I haven't found the plus crit which is in my deck. I continue drawing up here. In the meantime, he does get another hostile takeover, and at this point I'm up to 5 bad publicity, which means that if I'm going to introduce my Surfer and Paintbrush onto my board, I would like to do so during a run. That would completely offset the cost of using SMC and even give me a large discount on my Surfer or Paintbrush. So I'm going to do exactly that, but first a Dirty Laundry run on the remote. I fetch and see a melange, which I trash. So now I have Paintbrush and Dog, and that's pretty good. Now this is where my rig looks really fishy. If you're an experienced player, you would probably expect the Surfer here, but most people don't. The best thing about bringing Surfer out with SMC is that you can catch them off guard with the very first use of Surfer. Because usually they won't be prepared for you to surf all the way to the bottom of the server. If you look at this as the opponent, you think, okay, he has a barrier breaker out, he can't get through my sentry or end my code gate in the same run without a clone chip or another SMC. So if there's a code gate into the archer that's protecting the melange, this would be a very safe opportunity for him to score an agenda. But that's not the case. I can easily tinker the outermost piece of ice and then run straight in. Now, speaking of tinkering, the main reason why I haven't been so aggressive on his centrals at all, even though I know they are loaded with agendas, is because I haven't joined into a copy of Tinkering or Security Nexus until now. Without Tinkering or Nexus, I run into the huge pot the significant possibility of face checking into unwanted ice that will do some serious damage to my rig. You do not want to run into an archer without security nexus or tinkering to change it to barrier, the barrier subtype to back you up. You definitely need either of those. And now that I have both, my life becomes slightly easier. I do have to be concerned about the credit lead he has established though. Allowing him to run off with Melange for 2 whole turns has proved detrimental. So I've more or less given up on the credit race right now. I'm going solely for the Plascrete that's in my deck. I've drawn down to 8 cards left in my stack. I'm searching for that Plascrete. The moment I find it, I can begin running all his servers. Until then, it'll be a very bad idea. Trust me on that. Also, I've gotten a copy of Film Critic out. That will be very essential against the Argus ID. It still slows me down, having to click to get an agenda off, but at least I don't have to take attack or 2 meat damage, which could flatline me inadvertently. I draw 2 more times the next turn, and I still do not find the Plascrete that I need, so I have to let him get away with whatever agenda he wants to score. This time it's Atlas, bringing him up to 4 points. I'm starting to get a bit panicky here, but I do find my Plascrete in time. With my last 2 clicks, I'm going to play Plascrete, and with the 3 recurring prepaid credits, I'm going to use it on Levy. So that's pretty important. Now I've refreshed my entire deck, so now I'll get 3 more Maker's Eyes to play with. I get 3 more Tinkerings. This should help me quite a bit. I still haven't shown my strategy to him. He doesn't know that I'm running a Surfer deck. So he's going to get a nasty surprise when he attempts to score the Oaktown right here to bring him to match point. I'm going to tinker the outermost piece of ice, so that it's now a barrier. It might be a 4 deep server, I might only have 1 SMC, but he doesn't know that I'm going to be able to run through it very easily. He reses a Merumati. I bring out the Surfer for free with my Bad Pup, and I break through the Merumati easily with Dog, followed by 3 consecutive serves all the way down. So now the Merumati is all the way at the bottom. I've served all my way deep out into the sea to fetch the Oaktown renovation that was going on in the middle of the ocean. Ignore the Ichi res here, he misunderstood what I was trying to do at this point. I'll let him take the rest back, and we go all the way down, completely bypassing the archer at the base of the server. Isn't that neat? You think that the archer and the Ichi are going to stop me cold because I don't have a sentry breaker, high strength sentry breaker? Well, you'll be pretty disappointed at this point. Unfortunately for him, I'm going to be able to get through every single piece of ice without even encountering it. And that's the beauty of Surfer. Without any upgrades to secure your server, your ice mean completely nothing to me. Every additional ice he places on his remote is just an additional 2 credit tags to me. And what's the 2 credit tags when I already have 5 Bad Pup? Right? So, that Oaktown is mine. More importantly, the Oaktown is not his, so I don't have to worry about him being on match point. I take the 2 meat damage from Argus, and I finish off my turn by going up to 46 credits, leaving me out of Sea Scorched range. Alright, so here he plays the Never Advanced Shell game. It might or might not be an Atlas in the remote. I can't tell for sure. So instead of gambling on the remote, I'm going to leave it there. And I'm trying to figure out a way to get into R&D. I did draw into a Maker's High on that quality time. But it's a bit risky running into R&D without knowing what's the outermost ice's subtype. So here I'm going to tinker the innermost piece of ice and perform a Maker's High. Playing Maker's High on your last click is risky against Argus. You know they're running snares. If you get tripped over one, you're in a lot of trouble. He reses an archer against me, and I know I have the credit lead, so I can happily perform the security nexus trace right here. Whether it was a barrier or not was of no consequence, because I can easily trace through with nexus. Knowing that he can't beat me, there's no point in him pumping the trace, so I'm just gonna easily bypass it for 2 credits. It would have been 3 if I didn't have the extra link from Dyson Ram Chip. Alright, so the archer res was pretty crucial. This means that he's down to 3 agenda points from 4 agenda points. Every single time he reses an archer, I am coming out ahead. And here he reses a DRT, I see an EBC, I access an Atlas, which goes onto my Film Critic, and this is where Film Critic shines heavily. I didn't want to take 2 meat damage. I mean, I could take 2 meat damage, I ended up discarding cards anyway, but hosting it on Film Critic means that I can leisurely take it off at my leisure later, and not worry about damage at all. Damage is not very good because if it snipes my Scavenge or Dog from my hand, I'll find myself with no ways to serve into servers because I cannot break ice with my barrier breaker if it runs out of tokens, dog tokens. So here he attempts to advance an Oak Town again, which is pretty curious. Does he think I can't get into the server? That can't be. I play the dog and I run to his server. He can't do much about this, can he? Well, what if the outermost ice is yet another archer? Seems like it is. He reses another archer, so he's now down to 2 agenda points. Alright, fine. I'm going to trace through it with my security nexus, and knowing that the innermost ice might not be a barrier, I jack out. I paintbrush the now res archer, and I get through his server by surfing down the archer, stealing the Oaktown renovation. I take the 2 meat damage because Film Critic is loaded already. No choice there. But the most important thing is he spends so many credits to do that. He's now way lower than me. He cannot threaten Sea Scorch anymore, and he has only 2 agenda points. He's digging his own grave. Yeah, he's getting a worse and worse board state, and I'm just getting better. So at this point, I'm just gonna lock down R&D. Every single time I find a Maker's Eye, I'm just gonna run through that with Paintbrush, and there's nothing he can do. He can slowly play the shell game and never advance his agendas, but it's only a matter of time since I'm on match point that I find a winning Maker's Eye, and that I do in due course. Paintbrush, Maker's Eye, surf down the archer, the outermost ice on the R&D. Even though he tries to Jackson, I do manage to find myself the winning agenda. So as you notice this game, the moment I got set up with the Surfer, Paintbrush, and Dog combo with the Security Nexus and enough money, I was basically unstoppable. There was nothing my opponent could do. He was very, very helpless himself. And that is the case with many runners nowadays. If you let them get to their critical point, you are just going to be in a world of hurt as the corp, because there's very little you can do to keep them out of your servers. Without some incredible luck, you're just going to lose. So what my opponent could have done was to just rush out his agendas. And yeah, early on I was very helpless. When he scored the first Atlas, the Profiteering, all the hostiles, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even run his centrals, face check, or deny his agendas, let alone run his remotes. The problem with his scoring was that the 3-1 agendas, namely the Profiteering, was far too slow. Your goal is to win, not to get 100 credits. And because of that, basically game himself, because he wasn't able to leverage on his huge credit pool to do anything to me. Archer also killed his tempo a lot. He would have ended the game with 6 agenda points, I think, if he did not rest any archers. Granted, if he did not rest any archers, I would have gotten a way easier win as well, but it shows you that Archer is not exactly the best if you are sacking your agendas to it, unless you can score 2 or more agenda points off of it by making a secure remote or something along that line. There are ways you can sabotage Kate Surfer, although it does need some thinking to get around it. From playing this deck myself, I can tell you this: upgrades are annoying as hell. My opponent doesn't run any upgrades because it's Wayland, and that's very unfortunate, but for every other matchup, Paintbrush and Tinkering are both very click intensive ways to get the outermost ice to become a barrier, and because of that, it folds pretty hard to RP and Caprice, because it means that you can't really make a solid remote run, and even if you do, you still have to deal with Caprice. Now Caprice must be pre-res, as you are encountering the outermost piece of ice, but still, if they do that, you lose a side game, you are not getting in again as the runner. It's also possible to tactically res ice. The biggest weakness of this deck is that your on-demand barrier painter, which is the paintbrush, does not work on unres ice. So as long as you keep the outermost ice of a server unres, the runner is always in a very tough spot, because it's very hard to surf down the server if you are not going to give the runner any barriers. Another good way to counter this, on the same line of thought, is to install a new outermost ice at return, come in unres. They cannot paintbrush it. They have to if you do not rest the outermost piece of ice, they have to continue through the server, which means that they'll potentially encounter non-barrier ice, which they cannot use surf down with, or use dog to break. So those are ways which you can sabotage the surfer. And it is still a pretty strong deck against players who are not very familiar with it. It can completely ruin glacier based strategies. Thanks for watching. Happy net running. Goodbye.